When you read Isaiah, are you comforted or confused? Do you understand it, or do you get frustrated and scratch your head like, this does not make any sense to me? Well, imagine if it was Isaiah talking about you and you're still confused. Now that's even greater frustration, because I'm somehow supposed to be fulfilling prophecies, but I don't understand the prophecy to begin with. Now for this, rewind to 1823. You have a sleepy 17-year-old upstairs in the cabin, and the angel Moroni appears to him. There's Joseph Smith, and what does the angel Moroni do? He just quotes scripture, left and right. Some from the book of Acts, some from Joel, and yes, quite a bit from the book of Isaiah. Chapter 11 of Isaiah became this patriarchal blessing of sorts for that young prophet in the making, as Joseph is told by the angel, these verses have not yet been fulfilled, but they're about to be. Now that's 1823. Fast forward about a decade and a half, and Joseph Smith is still wrestling with Isaiah 11. Section 113 of the Doctrine and Covenants are his questions about that chapter. And I really do wonder if he's struggling with a sense of, am I doing what God intended me to do? Or have I fallen short? Am I helping God fulfill his promises, or am I getting in the way of those? Remember, he's come down from the mountaintop of the Kirtland Temple dedication, and things seem to be falling apart left and right. How much of this is on me? And he's struggling with that. So look at his questions. Verse 1 and 2. Who is the stem of Jesse spoken of in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th verses of the 11th chapter of Isaiah? Who is that? And the Lord's answer is crystal clear. Verily, thus saith the Lord, it is Christ. Now, if you go back and actually read those first 5 verses of Isaiah 11, how could it not be? This is a prophecy of the Messianic age, and it's beautiful. It's the passage that talks about this Messiah, this stem of Jesse, as he's referred to, as one who has the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. It's the one that talks about the girdle of his reins and the girdle of his loins and faithfulness and valiance. And I mean, this is the chapter that lays out the path toward the millennium, where lions and lambs lie down together. This is the millennial age. This is the Messianic age. And so, yes, the Messiah must come to usher it in. It's a beautiful, beautiful passage. Read it with Jesus in mind, and it becomes crystal clear. But there's still some confusion, because it's not just the stem of Jesse that's mentioned. There's like rods and roots and branches and all kinds of plant parts. So what do I make of all of those? In verse 3 and 4, Joseph asks, okay, fine. What is the rod spoken of in the 1st verse of the 11th chapter of Isaiah that should come of the stem of Jesse? And here's the answer. Behold, thus saith the Lord, it is a servant in the hands of Christ, who is partly a descendant of Jesse, as well as of Ephraim, or of the house of Joseph, on whom there is laid much power. Now that's a tricky one. It's not Jesus here. This is someone different. Someone that's part Jesse and part Ephraim. We got some Judah, we've got some, in some ways, if it's part Jesse, that means part Judah, and part Ephraim, we have kind of the two tribes that in some ways share a birthright. Political power in Judah, but then also kind of a spiritual gift as far as Ephraim being in charge of gathering the rest of the family home. Now, who exactly is this? I think in some ways it's ironic that the Lord is a little bit more nuanced, a little less obvious, I would say. Who's the stem? Oh, it is Christ, crystal clear. Who's the rod? Well, let me talk about him a little bit. Maybe it's to keep you humble, Joseph, because that's you. You're the one upon whom I have laid much power. There is a convergence of birthrights within you as you are tasked with bringing forth another dispensation of the gospel in this, the fullness of times. You're bringing every tribe. So yeah, you probably have some inheritances from multiple. Now, with that in mind, reread Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, though, and let's fill in some blanks. This will be important. There shall come forth a rod, which we're now seeing as Joseph Smith, out of the stem of Jesse, which we now know is Christ. But then he says, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And who is that? Well, the branch is capital B. And the way the branch is described later, that's definitely Christ. But then growing out of his roots, who's that? Well, go to verse 5 and 6 of D&C 113. And Joseph asks, what is the root of Jesse? Now, we just saw that root mentioned in verse 1, but Joseph's specifically wondering the root spoken of in the 10th verse of the 11th chapter. Is that the same root? Seems like it. He says, the Lord answers, behold, thus saith the Lord, it is a descendant of Jesse, as well as of Joseph, unto whom rightly belongs the priesthood, and the keys of the kingdom, for an ensign, and for the gathering of my people in the last days. Can't you be as clear as you were on the first question I asked? Well, I guess I could be, but no, I won't. That's you again, Joseph. If you think about Joseph Smith being described multiple times with similar language in this passage, that's his role in the restoration. To be an ensign, a banner is unfurled. The restoration is now spreading across the earth. It's meant to gather my people in the last days through priesthood ordinances. And priesthood has been restored to you, Joseph. We're talking Aaronic and Melchizedek back in 1829. We're talking gathering of Israel, dispensation of the gospel of Abraham, sealing power through Elijah, just recently in Kirtland Temple. So this is all that's happening. If you want to kind of see where that leads in the Isaiah passage, look at chapter 11, verse 10. In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek. His rest shall be glorious. Now, is that Joseph? We Latter-day Saints have no problem saying that. But both Jews and Christians that stick to Isaiah itself would never dream of some latter-day prophet restoring priesthood authority to accomplish those millennial missions. In fact, they would have a very different interpretation. And I can't blame them for it. Here's where it gets complex and yet really fascinatingly beautiful. Hebrew poetry has a unique rhyme scheme. You're not repeating the sound of the end of words, you're repeating ideas in a lot of different combinations. Isaiah was the greatest of Hebrew prophets and poets, I should say. His poetry was as profound as you can get, as beautiful, as complex. And there's simple forms like synonymous parallelism, where you say one thing and then say it again, just with different terms. It's synonymous because it's repeating the same concept. There's antithetical parallelism. It's still parallel, but there's kind of a perpendicular in the middle. It'll say something and then repeat the idea in its opposite. Okay? There's the most complex form, which is chiasmus, where you're repeating, it's a whole string of couplets, but they go in and then go out in reverse order. Chiasm is fascinating. The first idea rhymes with the last idea, and then the second idea rhymes with the second to last idea, and you work your way into some central climax. Again, magnificent, and Isaiah was the best at it of any Hebrew poet I've ever seen. Well, to me, the question is, when you read Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, is that simple synonymous parallelism, or is it a fascinating chiasmus of sorts? Or could it be both, depending on which dispensation you're talking about, meridian or fullness? This is where it gets wild. The question I have goes back to chapter 11, verse 1. Let's read it again. There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Now ask a Jew about that, and they will see that yes, Jesse is a tree. But David, who's the son of Jesse and the greatest of Israelite kings, that tree grew for a while, but then ended up getting cut down by the Assyrians, by the Babylonians, by the Greeks, by the Romans. And it's just this dead stump. But someday that stump will sprout new life. Picture an olive tree that will do that. And the olive tree of Israel will bring forth new life through the coming of the Messiah. There will come a rod, new growth out of a dead stem, a new messianic kingdom out of the dead branch of David. And then let me say that exactly, that same thought again in different terms. A branch, capital B, Messiah, shall grow out of Jesse's roots, the old stem. Okay? It's tricky because rod, stem, branch, root, what part of the plant are we talking about? But if you think about a dead stump and new growth coming out of it, that could be taken as simple synonymous parallelism. I'm going to say the same thing twice. A Messiah will come out of David. Let me say it again. A Messiah will come out of David. We're just going to use different plant parts to describe it. Now, Jews would say that's the case. And someday we're still waiting for the Messianic age, the Messiah to come to usher it in. That's what the rest of Isaiah 11 is about. Christians would agree that yes, it's the promise of a coming Messiah, repeated twice, but Christians would say he has come. The Son of David is Jesus himself. Now, so far, Latter-day Saints are fine with both of those. They're fine that yes, apostasy will end in a Messianic age. We agree with you, Jews. And we'll say, yes, that Messiah was Jesus. We'll agree with our fellow Christians. Then where on earth does Joseph Smith factor into all of this? Well, what's going to bring about the restoration that ends apostasy? What will bring about the gathering that reverses the scattering? Priesthood ordinances, which require priesthood keys, which require a prophet at the head to accomplish this saving work of God. The restoration must be a new banner unfurled for the nations to come to. And that's where Joseph Smith comes in this final dispensation. All things gathered together in one. That's our job. Now, what on earth does that mean about Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1? Well, I guess in some ways it's going to have to be more of a chiasm than a synonymous parallelism. Because if the first part is suggesting that Joseph Smith will grow out of Jesus, then flip it, and the second half seems to suggest that Jesus will grow out of Joseph Smith. Now, how in the world is that possible? Actually, it's not the first time that Jesus has wrestled with these kinds of confusing realities. There was a time where he kept getting asked difficult questions by the scribes and Pharisees that were trying to trap him. And what does Jesus say on one of those occasions? This is in Matthew chapter 22, near the end. He says, okay, fine, you keep asking questions about me. Let me ask you a question about me. Who's Christ? Where does he come from? Whose son is he? In other words, where's the Messiah going to come from? And the scribes and Pharisees say, well, David. The Messiah will be a son of David. They're probably thinking about Isaiah 11, honestly. And then Jesus says, okay, fine. Let me go from Isaiah 11 into the Psalms then, because David in the Psalms keeps referring to the Messiah as his Lord. So how does that work? The Messiah is supposed to be David's son, and yet David calls the Messiah his Lord. So which is he? Did David give birth to the Lord, or did the Lord give birth to King David? Who called whom? And the scribes and Pharisees were so dumbfounded by that question that they stopped asking Jesus questions of their own. Okay? He definitely had the upper hand on that one. But there is this sense of almost chicken and egg kind of question. Who brings forth whom? Now think about this in terms of Jesus and Joseph Smith. Think about this in terms of Christianity and restored Christianity. And can't you see how chicken and egg both provide for the other? It was because of Jesus Christ that Joseph Smith knew the truth to begin with and asked questions based on James 1:5 and sought an understanding. He wanted to know Jesus, and he came to know him. And as a result, then brought forth a new dispensation whereby everyone could come to know Jesus as he really is. Jesus inspired and called Joseph, and Joseph restored our understanding of Jesus. It was thanks to Christianity that Joseph can have these kinds of experiences. There's no restored Christianity without Christianity to begin with. So it is thanks to Christianity. Well, I'll put it this way. The restored church would grow out of Christianity. And then Christianity would grow out of the restored church, as our job is to prepare the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ. Chicken and egg, I'm grateful for both. And Isaiah 11, with the help of section 113 of the Doctrine and Covenants, makes that a little confusing and yet beautifully clear. I hope we can see where we come from, and I hope we can see what is meant to come from us.